In just 45 seconds, one of Hollywood's most beloved actors would deliver a scathing takedown that left a late-night host speechless, his smugness evaporating as the studio audience watched in stunned silence. What began as light banter about Depp's latest film quickly devolved into a brutal verbal assault that exposed years of festering resentment and professional jealousy. By the time the cameras stopped rolling, careers would be questioned, reputations shattered, and one man would storm off set, leaving behind a wake of destruction that would dominate entertainment headlines for weeks. The tension was palpable from the moment Johnny Depp walked onto the Late Show stage last night. Something felt different about his usual charismatic swagger. There was an edge, a coiled energy that seemed ready to spring at any moment. Colbert, oblivious to the storm brewing across from him, launched into his typical self-congratulatory monologue about having one of cinema's true artists on his show. Johnny, Colbert began with that familiar condescending tone that has grated on guests for years. I have to say, watching your career has been quite the roller coaster ride. The highs, the lows, well, let's call them the very public learning experiences. The host leaned back in his chair with that trademark smirk that has made him enemies throughout Hollywood. Depp's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Learning experiences, he repeated slowly, his voice carrying a dangerous undertone that anyone who knew him would recognize as a warning sign. That's an interesting way to put it, Stephen. Well, I mean, we've all watched the headlines, Colbert continued, seemingly oblivious to the shift in atmosphere. The legal battles, the personal struggles. It must be refreshing to finally be able to focus on your craft again instead of, damage control. He chuckled at his own perceived cleverness, but the laugh felt hollow in the suddenly tense studio. The audience, sensing something brewing, fell unusually quiet. Depp leaned forward slightly, his fingers drumming against the arm of his chair. A nervous habit that those close to him knew meant he was fighting to maintain composure. Damage control, Depp said, his voice steady but carrying an unmistakable edge. You know, Stephen, I've done a lot of interviews over the years, sat across from a lot of hosts who think they're journalists, comedians, or some combination of both. But I've got to hand it to you. You've managed to package sanctimony into entertainment better than most. Colbert's smile faltered for just a moment before he forced it back into place. Oh, come on now, Johnny. We're just having a conversation here, between friends. But his tone had shifted, becoming more defensive, more guarded. Friends? Depp's laugh was sharp and humorless. Is that what we're calling this? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels more like you've invited me here to be your evening's entertainment. The damaged movie star, ready to be poked and prodded for your audience's amusement. The camera operator shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to keep rolling or cut away. In the control room, producers were frantically gesturing, torn between stopping what could become a public relations nightmare and capturing what might be the most compelling television they'd air all year. Colbert tried to regain control, his media-trained instincts kicking in. Johnny, I think you're misunderstanding the tone here. I'm genuinely interested in your new project. Your return to... My return? Depp interrupted, his voice rising just enough to cut through the host's practiced deflection. Stephen, with all due respect, I never fucking left. I've been working, creating, supporting my craft, while people like you built careers on tearing down people like me. You want to talk about my learning experiences? Let's talk about yours. The studio audience was now completely silent, the tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. Colbert's face had gone pale, his usual confidence cracking as he realized he was no longer in control of his own show. I think we should, Colbert began, but Depp wasn't finished. No, you opened this door, Stephen. You want to psychoanalyze my career choices, my personal life, my roller coaster ride? Let's analyze yours. Let's talk about how you've made millions sitting behind this desk, playing the righteous truth teller, while contributing absolutely nothing of value to the world except snark and false superiority. Depp's voice was calm now, deadly calm, which somehow made his words cut deeper. You mock people's struggles, their failures, their humanity, and then you wrap it up in this neat little package of moral authority. But here's the thing. When the cameras stop rolling, when you go home to your mansion built on other people's pain, what do you see when you look in the mirror? Colbert was visibly shaken now, his hands trembling slightly, as he reached for his water glass. The power dynamic had completely shifted, and everyone in the studio could feel it. This wasn't going according to script, and the host, who had built his reputation on never being caught off guard, was completely unprepared for this level of raw, unfiltered truth. I don't think that's fair," Colbert stammered, his voice lacking its usual conviction. "I report on news. I comment on current events. It's not personal." Depp leaned back in his chair, a cold smile playing at his lips. "Not personal? Stephen, everything you do is personal. Every snide comment, every raised eyebrow, every self-righteous monologue is deeply, intimately personal. You've made a career out of being personally invested in other people's misery." The confrontation was building to something explosive, and everyone in the studio could sense it. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity before Colbert, desperately trying to salvage his show and his dignity, made the fatal mistake of pushing back. "You know what, Johnny? I've been doing this for years. I've interviewed presidents, world leaders, Nobel Prize winners. I don't need to sit here and take this from someone who..." "Someone who what?" Depp's voice cut through the air like a blade, his eyes narrowing to dangerous slits. "Go ahead, Stephen. Finish that sentence." "Someone who what? Someone who's been dragged through the mud by people exactly like you? Someone who's had their life dissected by vultures masquerading as entertainers?" The studio audience was completely captivated now, witnessing something that would be talked about for years. This wasn't just a celebrity interview gone wrong. This was a reckoning. Colbert's face flushed red as his carefully constructed persona began to crumble. "I was going to say someone who clearly has anger management issues," he snapped, immediately regretting the words as soon as they left his mouth. The effect was instantaneous. Depp's entire demeanor changed, shifting from controlled aggression to something far more dangerous. He stood up slowly, deliberately, his movements predatory, as he fixed Colbert with a stare that could have melted steel. "Anger management issues," Depp repeated, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, yet somehow carrying more menace than if he had been shouting. "You want to see anger management issues, Stephen? You want to psychoanalyze me on national television? Let me give you something to analyze." The host instinctively pushed his chair back, suddenly aware that he had crossed a line he couldn't uncross. His production team was frantically signaling from behind the cameras, but it was too late to stop what was happening. "For years," Depp continued, beginning to pace behind his chair like a caged animal, "I've watched you sit in that chair, protected by your writers, your producers, your network, taking shots at people who can't fight back. You've made millions being a professional bully, hiding behind the guise of comedy and political commentary. Now hold on." Colbert tried to interrupt, but Depp's voice rose, cutting him off completely. "No, you hold on. You want to talk about anger? Let me tell you about anger. I'm angry that talentless hacks like you get to sit in judgment of people who've actually created something meaningful. I'm angry that you've turned human suffering into punchlines. I'm angry that you've convinced yourself that your cruelty is somehow noble because you dress it up with big words and fake indignation." The camera operators were now zooming in, capturing every twitch of Colbert's increasingly panicked expression as Depp's verbal assault intensified. "You know what the difference is between us, Stephen?" Depp leaned forward, placing his hands on the desk between them, his face inches from the host's. "When I fuck up, I own it. I face the consequences. I don't hide behind a desk making jokes about other people's pain. I don't pretend that my failures somehow make me morally superior." Colbert was visibly sweating now, his usual quick wit completely abandoned, as he struggled to form a coherent response. This isn't. We should probably take a commercial break." "Oh, no, Depp said, his smile returning but lacking any warmth. "You started this dance, Stephen. You wanted to dig into my personal life, my struggles, my learning experiences. So, let's keep digging. Let's talk about your learning experiences." The host's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard, clearly regretting every decision that had led to this moment. The power in the room had shifted so completely that Colbert, who had built his career on never appearing vulnerable, now looked like a frightened child. "Let's talk about how you've spent years kissing the asses of politicians and celebrities while pretending to be some kind of truth-teller," Depp continued, his voice gaining momentum. "Let's talk about how you've sold your soul for ratings, How you've abandoned any pretense of journalistic integrity for cheap laughs and cheaper applause. The audience was completely silent now, afraid to even breathe as they watched one of Hollywood's most enigmatic stars systematically destroy one of late-night television's most established hosts. "You want to know about my anger management?" Depp asked, straightening up and adjusting his jacket with deliberate slowness. "Here's my anger management. I channel my pain into my work. I turn my struggles into art. I create something beautiful from something broken. What do you create, Stephen? Besides contempt and division?" Colbert opened and closed his mouth several times, looking like a fish gasping for air. His usual arsenal of prepared responses, his practiced comebacks, his media training, none of it was helping him now. He was completely, utterly outmatched. "I create. I inform people," he finally managed to stammer, his voice barely audible. Depp's laugh was cold and bitter. "You inform people? About what? About how to tear each other down? About how to find humor in human misery? About how to feel superior by watching others fall?" The tension in the room was now approaching a breaking point, and everyone present could feel that something catastrophic was about to happen. Colbert, in a last desperate attempt to regain control of his own show, made the mistake that would seal his fate. Rising from his chair with false bravado, he pointed an accusatory finger at Depp and declared, "You know what? I think this interview is over. Security." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Depp's expression shifted from controlled fury to something far more dangerous. A cold, calculating calm that sent chills through everyone watching. "Security?" Depp repeated, his voice eerily quiet. "You're calling security on me? On your own guest? Because I had the audacity to call out your bullshit on your own show?" The security guards hesitated at the edge of the stage, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. They'd been hired to handle unruly audience members, not to forcibly remove A-list celebrities who were simply speaking their minds. "Stephen," Depp continued, his voice rising now with righteous indignation, "this is exactly what I'm talking about. The moment someone challenges you, the moment someone refuses to play your game, you run, crying for help. This is who you really are, a coward hiding behind other people's power." The host's face had gone from red to a sickly pale color as he realized his authority meant nothing in this moment. The security guards weren't moving, the production crew was frozen, and his audience was completely captivated by the spectacle unfolding before them. "You want me gone?" Depp asked, spreading his arms wide in a theatrical gesture. "Fine, I'll leave, but not because you're kicking me out. I'm leaving because this place, this show, this whole fucking charade is beneath me." He turned to face the stunned audience, his voice carrying easily through the silent studio. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed something rare in today's media landscape. Honesty. Unfiltered, uncomfortable honesty. This man," he gestured dismissively toward Colbert, "has built his career on attacking people who can't defend themselves. Tonight, he picked on someone who could." The audience began to murmur, some nodding in agreement, others looking shocked at what they'd witnessed. Depp turned back to Colbert, who was now gripping the edge of his desk as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. "You know what the saddest part is, Stephen?" Depp asked, his voice now carrying a note of genuine pity. "You could have been something great. You had talent once, before you sold it for easy laughs and cheap applause. Before you decided that tearing others down was easier than building yourself up." Colbert tried one last time to salvage something from the wreckage. "Johnny, please, let's just what?" Depp snapped. "Pretend this didn't happen. Go back to your scripted questions about my latest movie while you plot your next character assassination. No, Stephen, some things can't be undone." He began walking toward the exit, but stopped and turned back one final time. "You want to know the real difference between us? When I leave here tonight, I'll go home and sleep peacefully, knowing I stood up for myself and everyone else you've ever hurt with your cruelty. You'll go home and lie awake, wondering if everyone you've ever interviewed secretly hates you as much as I do." The words hit Colbert like physical blows. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly as he watched his career potentially crumble in real time. "And Stephen," Depp called out as he reached the edge of the stage, "next time you want to psychoanalyze someone's life choices, maybe take a long look in the mirror first. Ask yourself what kind of man makes his living kicking people when they're down. With that, Johnny Depp walked off the stage, leaving behind a stunned silence that seemed to stretch on forever. Colbert remained frozen at his desk, his face a mask of shock and humiliation as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. The audience sat in complete silence, processing what they had witnessed. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a public execution. And they had all been forced to watch as one of late-night television's biggest names was systematically destroyed by a man who had simply refused to play the victim. In the control room, producers scrambled to figure out how to end the show, how to explain what had happened, how to contain the fallout that was sure to follow. But it was too late. The damage was done. As the studio doors closed behind Depp, the sound echoed through the silent space like a gunshot. Colbert slowly sank back into his chair, his hands shaking as he reached for his water glass. His trademark smirk was gone, replaced by the hollow look of a man who had just been exposed for exactly what he was. The cameras kept rolling for several more seconds, capturing Colbert's complete breakdown of composure before finally cutting to an unscheduled commercial break. But the damage was irreversible. In less than 15 minutes, Johnny Depp had done what years of criticism and controversy never could. He had stripped away Stephen Colbert's carefully constructed persona and revealed the petty, vindictive man underneath. When the show finally resumed, it was with a visibly shaken host reading from prepared cards, his usual confidence replaced by nervous energy and forced smiles. But everyone watching knew the truth. They had witnessed the night Stephen Colbert's career began its inevitable decline, brought down not by scandal or controversy, but by a man who simply refused to be his victim. The confrontation was over, but its impact would reverberate through Hollywood and beyond for years to come. Johnny Depp had walked into that studio as just another guest promoting a project. He walked out as the man who had single-handedly destroyed one of television's most untouchable figures, using nothing more than raw honesty and the courage to speak truth to power.